Welcome to Majesty in the Moment. I am Majesty AliNICOLE WOW. Definitely looking forward to being with you during this time. As most of you know, these particular segments are just impromptu types of renderings. I don't have any planned topic or so. Just sometimes when some topic does hit me, I just come forth. So there's no real plan set agenda. But I felt guided just to come forth and just be in the space just for a moment, just to see what emerges. Those of you who are not familiar with my branding, I'm a cross-functional authority, cross-trained in over 200 areas. And so I get into different modes and functionalities during these particular renderings. So there could be empowerment, motivational speaking, some type of training or an activation. Sometimes during these particular segments, I do actually have clients that come forth, and then we're just in the moment in a workspace session, seeing what's arising, so to speak, and how it can be beneficial to you. So as I'm being present, I just want to acknowledge those of you who have really been on the journey of inner work and doing the not only transformational work, but also the evolutionary work to start to move yourself forward so that you can really well define and refine what you are really here for. Because a lot of you have been serving in purposes, and I'm going to say it, those purposes have sort of expired, so to speak. Not saying that they're not still relevant to some extent, but because you've been so immersed into what you've been doing or what you felt called to do at one point, it's actually kind of blocking you from being able to move forward. And I actually talked about a little of this in a previous segment, and I'll make sure that I have the link below to that particular one that just talked about new things emerging and being able to forge a new way and not getting distracted by what currently is and how to move forward from there. So I'm going to actually use that kind of as a jumping point to talk about. And again, this segment is very impromptu, so various topics could come up and various functionalities of me could come up during this time. That's why it's all about majesty in the moment and being able to be present in the moment and see what emerges. So on the note of possibly being distracted by, I would say, even current success, right? Things that have been working out for you, but some of you are finding where you're accelerating that, advancing that, and then some of you have found that you're sort of plateauing. But regardless of where you are, something I like to invite others into is a time of awareness that there's always something emerging that you need to be paying attention to. In the business space, primarily solo entrepreneurial space, I always encourage those individuals to be present with an emerging tribe that is really desiring to have something from them. So what that looks like is it's an ideal audience that would really benefit from a particular brand. But if that particular entrepreneur is so invested in what they think their niche focus is, and they're so focused on serving just a specific audience that they're missing out on being able to expand what they do in order to reach a broader audience, so to speak. I always say that there's a niche within a niche, the audience within the audience, and entrepreneurs primarily have to be very awake to what that is. But even if you're not in business, in life, you have to be awake and aware to that as well. What are the experiences within the experiences, and what is something that you've been doing maybe consistently that you're great at? It is your zone of genius, so to speak, but you're so immersed into that particular aspect that you aren't able to be aware of something else that is emerging, something else that is emerging. So my encouragement to you during this time is to take time out to, of course, I'm going to say, be present get in the moment and be intentional about listening into your life and listening into your, whether it's purpose, calling, your career, or so, and vocation, and see what is emerging, what is wanting to come forth, and how can you now start to reposition your dynamics in a certain way to align more with that which is emerging, right? You can also ask, what is distracting me at this moment, or what could potentially be distracting me? Because here's the thing about distractions. Distractions aren't always so, oh, it's an obvious distraction. Sometimes you're being distracted by routines. And also things that are actually priorities that you have to be doing, right? Those can become a distraction if you don't actually balance those and have everything in their right order, so to speak. It's divine order. So you want to make sure that you're just paying attention, you're paying attention to that. And of course, leveraging the power of the present moment, there's no better way than to access that type of wisdom, that type of insight, just from your life in general, but also within. So I started off talking about, well, actually congratulating, acknowledging about those of you who have been doing the inner work and really doing what you know best to do. And something I'm feeling guided to speak about is that in terms of that journey shifting, that looking at all that you've done inwardly and now being able to create your life anew externally, right? And what that could look like, which is going to be different for everyone. If you know much about me, I am all about creating experiences for individuals to explore themselves, to explore and tap into their own unique encoding and not get so much caught up in cookie cutter frameworks and systems. Not saying that some of the information doesn't serve you and does not provide great trigger mechanics and prompts for you to launch from, but not ultimately you following some type of structure and format that is going to be something that any and everybody can kind of, I guess, engage in, but people have to navigate and find their own way. But in terms of making some shifts from not just continuously doing the inner work, it's going to be a part of your journey regardless. But the thing about it is sometimes you can immerse so much within that you're not taking the time to integrate the inner conditions that have been cultivated, pulling up the harvest of that experience, and now being able to start creating your world anew from that place. Otherwise, what was all of the work about, right? Because it's about bringing forth the change, yes, within, but that change within needs to also come forth. Now, how does that come forth? How does that show up? Well, it can show up in a multitude of ways. Like I talked about in the previous segment, it can be in your new life's purpose, but it can just be in a new direction, just a new way of being with who you are, but also how you are with the world, and being able to show up, in that way. So since I was talking earlier, primarily as it relates to entrepreneurs and not being so fixated on a certain niche framework or a certain way that you do things, it's important that you learn to become unformed and to become flexible and cross-functional in what you do. I'm a multi-missioned individual. And so for me, it is never just about one primary thing or one signature thing. For me, it is always about the moment and what functionality do I need to be at in the moment. And to be, as Bruce Lee would say, be like water, and to be flexible, to be able to come into a situation and take on the shape and embodiment of that, and then be able to provide what is required for the moment, what is required for the moment, right? This is why I love kind of impromptu ways of beingness that don't allow me to get confined to oh, okay, here, this is what this particular podcast is about, or this particular series is about, so to speak. It's like, no, this is whatever it is in the moment where the guidance is leading, and whatever role I need to show up in at that time, that functionality, that is what it is. That is what it is. All right. And so, no, everybody is not necessarily trained to be able to do that, or gifted to do that. But one thing I will say is that the more you allow yourself to be in the moment and understand that your journey has prepared you for different moments, and you don't always need to be quote unquote rehearsed or so buttoned down for those. Let me say this. There are times that you literally do need to be prepared in terms of you have something that's laid out. Like if you're teaching, you have a plan or so. There are things that you need. And there are times when I'm in a certain functionality that I may have an outline or different things I want to cover. Majority of the time, that's not so for me. I can break off into a training and actually go literally for hours, or render an activation. And there is no formal preparation for that in the traditional format. The preparation comes is because over time, there's been the, I don't necessarily want to call it training, so to speak. It's just the experience. Anything that you do over and over, you get consistent at. But at the same time, you're able to come out of pocket from the traditional systems, which I really don't like to do anything under the traditional systems, but they are leverage, and just be, in the moment. So whether you are in business, or whether you have a calling, whether you are in ministry, or just your everyday life, learn to be unformed and to be flexible. Know when to have what you need before you, and then learn to be in the moment. The reason why this is important, because so many people get so paralyzed, and I see it constantly in terms of, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. Sometimes we're going to be in situations where we won't know exactly what to do, but you can call for divine guidance and help. You can call out to God. In the Bible, it says that when you open your mouth, the Lord will fill it. But of course, you need to be prepared and cultivated and have a relationship for sure. But regardless, you need to be ready. You just need to be ready, because you don't ever know when some type of opportunity will emerge, all right? Or when something will happen, and you even need to know the right state of mind to be in, the right words or so. Now, how does all this pertain to, again, the inner work that I was talking about before and bringing it to the outside? Is because when you look at what you have been doing as far as your inner work and transformational work, evolutionary work, that means there's been preparation. There's been a process. And if you were present with your process, you would be more awake to all different types of core aspects that are vital for moving forward. But let's just say that you were semi-sleepwalking through through the process. But because you have still had a process, there is an opportunity to still be present with that, and to ask, is there anything from the journey that benefits me in the present that maybe I didn't fully grasp, but I can get that information now, okay? I can learn that lesson now, right? So there are multiple ways that you can examine your journey. What are things that you have done in terms of the inner work, mastering your inner game, that's ready to come forth? Now, for me, this is something I do consistently. And even when I am rendering and providing different trainings or segments or so, there's always the opportunity, even for my own up-leveling, even in the present moment, to gain, I wonder how I can benefit from even what I'm sharing, even though it is a rich part of my experience. Something that I normally mention in different segments, not necessarily some of the earlier ones in these particular segments, but if you hear other teachings, especially if I'm doing activations or a lot of impromptu teachings and training, so to speak, I will make it very clear. This is a disclaimer. This is not channeled information or anything of that nature. It is that my experience is a rich experience with wisdom cultivated through my own processes, okay? Divinely guided, yes. And then in the moment, whatever is coming up from my experience to be shared is what I flow from. That means God has given me the wisdom from that which has been cultivated, and then it comes forth in whatever format, whatever format. Like right now, my functionality is that I am just speaking to you. So it's more like a podcast rendering, so to speak, just a conversational, even though you're not talking back with me, but I am just sharing with you just in a very organic format. But I could very well be guided to break off into some type of training. I could very well be guided to bring forth some type of activation. And if you've heard other segments, then you know that pretty much can happen. It pretty much can happen. So not to fragment you too much and kind of go back to what I was saying, is that being able to be unformed is going to be extremely beneficial. Most of you, even though you've had some transformational work, a lot of you are in a metamorphosis phase, but the metamorphosis is very evolutionary, more so than it is a transformational process. In some of my more extensive work, signature work around new creation, metamorphosis, is that there are 3 functionalities that I teach from, and that is you have to be metamorphosized, evolutionized, and then optimized. I primarily teach this in the business space, but it really applies to really any area of life. And that's where you are looking at the metamorphosis of something, whether it's your experience, it could be a product, it could be however, you're looking at the evolution of it, because then that's what's going to be fully optimized or more actualized. And the reason why I teach from this is because a lot of what people are bringing forth is old news. And within this process, I normally share how your journey is not the butterfly. And people, especially in business or even ministry or however, people would take what their journey was and then make that kind of the monumental signature work that they put out into the world. And they build brands and, again, organizations and ministries just based on what the journey was and what they overcome or however. Believe it or not, in the evolution of our purpose, that is not what we are actually supposed to be bringing forth. That's why no matter how much we try to put out there to improve this world and in different ways, there is no real forward progression, because there's a misalignment in terms of what is being shared to help people move forward. Yes, your journey has significant value for sure. But something that I teach and train is that whatever your journey was, believe it or not, that is content in a sense, especially in business. That means that's your publications, that's many products or so. That is not your main thing, all right? That's not your main thing. The journey is not the butterfly, all right? The journey was the process. And that's what you share for people who are in their processes. But that's not your signature thing. Hear me when I say this. That's not your signature thing. And then a lot of you are like, but I've been preparing for this. You have. But I guarantee you, there is something else that is more signature. Now, I'm going to give an example of this. If you're familiar with the story of Joseph in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, Joseph, son of Jacob, the one who had the brothers that sold him into slavery, right? So he had the gift of dreaming, interpreting dreams. He was a dreamer and could interpret dreams. And when the Pharaoh of Egypt during that time had a troubling dream, Joseph was able to interpret that dream. And throughout Joseph's life and story, not going to get too much into that. Most of you know that story. And if not, this is your invitation to go and read that story. So he was known, in a sense, for multiple things, so to speak, but it was very signature about his dreams. And then he was brought forth to be able to interpret the dream of the Pharaoh. Now, as the story progresses, and he actually is put in charge of Egypt, second in command next to the Pharaoh, you don't hear much about him continuing in the dream interpretation role, even though he probably was still doing that. But his more expanded gifts came forth in terms of being able to be a chief architect and visionary for establishing systems and operations that were going to work economically for a thriving country, if you will, or so, whether in down times or not so down times. In this case, it was a famine. And so he was giving the wisdom and the insight based on the dreams that Pharaoh had. He interpreted those dreams and then knew exactly what needed to be done in terms of to prevent the famine from being able to bring hardship to Egypt, so to speak, so that they could still survive and thrive during those times, and then go on after the famine to be in a more thriving state, for sure. And so you hear more about those giftings that were coming forth, even though his journey was primarily, yes, he was in the house of Potiphar first, and then went to wrongly accused and went to prison, so to speak. And then his giftings for the dream work and dream interpretations were being able to be used during that time. But again, once he was sort of out of that, if we want to call that metamorphosis, the cocoon phase or so, he was into another phase of gifting that could be used and leveraged at a higher level. All right. So you want to be able to look at your life and your journey and just say, what is the metamorphosis of this journey? What is the evolution of that metamorphosis? And now what is fully ready to be optimized? What is ready to be expressed, right? So again, in business, I take people through this with branding and in their business, metamorphosis, and bring it into that evolutionary state. But you can really do this with any area of life, any area of life. So what has the journey of, again, going back to inner work, inner growth, all of what you've been doing, what does this really mean? What is the butterfly of this? What is the metamorphosis? Not the journey, all right? What did the journey produce? What did the journey produce? And then when you see what that is, believe it or not, that is still not it. Still not quite it. There's going to be more wisdom that will unlock to what the greater expansion is. The reason why I'm going here is because, again, once people then think, oh, that's it, here's what I'm here to do now, here's no, whatever comes up typically is the jump off point. So let me back up here and share a little bit more context around the metamorphosis aspect, okay? Just from the traditional standpoint of a caterpillar evolving into a butterfly, which I know most people teach it is transforming, and there's the elements of transformation, but it's more evolutionary because it became something else. It became a different entity of expression. So when a butterfly first comes out of the chrysalis, comes out of the cocoon, it doesn't actually go and just start flying. It actually is attached to that cocoon for a few hours because it's getting more acclimated to the environment. Keep in mind, it's been in a cocoon state for however long. There are different processes for it. It's typically 2 weeks or so, but it could be longer. Just depends if, obviously, if the butterfly forms, the caterpillar, the breakdown forms into a butterfly. It's on outside of that cocoon and it's attached there. And again, it's getting acclimated. So blood is flowing through the body and it's building up its strength, so that it can now come into this new life, this new experience. So with that, again, it didn't just jump out, launch itself from the cocoon and just start flying. It's getting acclimated, getting adjusted. It's a new world, a new life. It does not know yet at this point what a butterfly life is, because it is no longer a caterpillar, all right? And when it was coming unformed in the chrysalis, that was old data shedding away so that a new encoding could come forth and produce the butterfly. And so that's an old life, right? It's an old life. So when it's out acclimating, getting ready, if we look at this in the human context, and I have works around the human butterfly experience, when you are about to launch into something new, I'm willing to bet the farm, in a sense. I don't own one yet, but still metaphorically, where you feel like you're about to launch. Whatever is coming up is primarily going to be what your jump off work or expression is, all right? And even for your life, it's just kind of a launching phase. There will be something else that's emerging, and you'll get a good sense of what that is. That is where the bigger context or bigger expansion will take place. And then I can go all in on this particular aspect. It's representing more of what the journey has evolved into, okay? So being able to take everything up into this point, now everything, your life and everything up into this point, I want you to look at it through this lens, all right? Again, going back to what I said, what is the metamorphosis? What is the evolution of that? And what is ready to be optimized? What is ready to be optimized, right? And if you feel yourself still pulling elements from the past or from the journey itself, and it seems like it's a much more expansive way, you can already know, okay, let me go back to the drawing board in a sense, because the journey is not the butterfly. Whatever I came through, that is not it. But there are ways to share that. And I mentioned that. One of my teachings in communications metamorphosis is I take individuals through a process of you write for caterpillars, you speak to butterflies. So let me talk a little bit about that. When it's speak to butterflies, meaning a butterfly does not actually come out of the cocoon and then go back and teach other caterpillars how to go through that process, right? It goes on to live a butterfly life. So for you, when you are out of a journey, so to speak, and you may be teaching people as you're going and right as you come out, let that be a short phase, okay? Let that be a short phase. And if you want to serve people more in that way, then that's where you need to create products. And there are trainings that I have around this, particular aspect, and I'll make sure that I have links to those trainings below. But simple products, whether it's digital products or publications, and setting up simple platforms, not things that you really have to make a huge investment in. And it doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur or not, this still serves as part of your living legacy, so to speak, all right? Your contributions to the world, but being able to help you move beyond your current purpose so that you can really fulfill what that more expansive life's mission is for you, which is a holistic type of experience. It's a holistic type of experience, all right? So I know some of you are thinking, that's kind of cruel. I need to go back and teach people how to do what I've done. Again, you can, but it's in a very different way. So let me come back to what I was saying in terms of when you are outside of the cocoon, but not fully launched, all right? So that is a phase where you are sharing with people who need that aspect of your journey. and being able to be that 1 or 2 steps ahead, but actually you're more than that type of authority, you know, for those individuals. But again, you don't want to make that a residence, so to speak. You don't want to make that your primary thing. You really need to be able to move yourself into the unknown space of the new adventure, all right? The new adventure of being a butterfly in a human format, right? And that's what you want to mostly gravitate to. Will you still rendezvous and come across individuals who need a certain aspect of that part, you know, the former journey, so to speak? Absolutely. And can you share with them about? Absolutely. But you can also now, if they need something more, point them to a product that can help them with that, because that will not be, again, your main thing. That's not going to be your main thing. And again, for those who may be having a little challenge with that, we look at this world and we see the state that it continues to be in. Why? Because there is not the progression of moving forward with the evolution of the journey. The more we keep building things based on what was past and what was our past or so, you can never really move people or move the world into its own metamorphosis and break down into a new creation. So I'm really breaking off into talking about this. Again, these are some of these are signature works for me, and I have extensive background, especially as it relates to the human metamorphosis aspect, but just the metamorphosis aspect on multiple levels. And the reason why this is important, again, is because you want to be able to look at your life as a whole and know, who are you now? Who have you actually become? What is actually being requested? And if you want to say demanded from you about who you are, your life's purpose, your purpose in general. Again, like mine is multi-mission, it's multi-leveled, it's multifaceted, right? I am a prism that is just always waiting to shine in whatever dynamics, and it just depends. That's not everybody's mission. It was mine, part of my unique encoding. But what I do know to be true is that that's pretty much going to be what's going to be demanded of pretty much everybody, in a sense, in terms of bringing forth more. But you can't do that, more dimensions of who they are. You can't really do that if you are not in an evolutionary state of beingness, right? You're always going to be going through some metamorphosis. Like I said, even now, most of you are in some type of metamorphosis, right? And even like for me, as someone who is also a healer, there are times where I am in metamorphosis of that next journey and having to navigate that part and learning more about the miraculous aspects of who I am, so that, yes, I can be able to be that vessel of expression to others, be able to pour out, be able to not only help to heal others, but also empower other healers to come into that next level of who they are in that functionality. So it's not just a thing of, oh, you're a healer, you're a wellness consultant, so to speak, and you're just always well, so to speak. That's not necessarily the case. For most people, especially me, as in my deep metamorphosis, I was sick, if you want to use that term, in a sense, all the time, but still being able to actually heal others and heal myself. But it was because I was going through deeper levels of that type of experience so that I could come to know myself more fully and more wholly in that level of functionality, right? So again, I share that so that some of you who are in certain processes, just like financial aspects, when you're in a financial metamorphosis, you could have been successful on multiple levels, but your financial world may break down in the sense because a new world, a new creation of a financial and economics framework wants to come forth. So when you're in that metamorphosis, again, it's going to break down. But still, even when you start to come out of processes, whatever the journey was, it will not be the full expression. If you choose to try to level out at that phase and start bringing to the world in a more massive way what the journey was, you are going to plateau. You'll have some success for sure, but you actually don't want to create momentum around that because it's going to be a glass ceiling, all right? Because there is something, there's something more. And again, I have other trainings around this aspect. So in terms of just being in the moment, as you can see, I just allow myself to go with the guidance and the flow. And what seems to be momentum building, what's building in a momentous way is what I know the guidance is to be able to share. And I don't necessarily have to always be glued to what I started with. I let these segments take form. I let the segments, take form. So I am being guided at this moment to create the space for what feels like some type of mini process. And I'm just allowing myself to be present what that is, whether it's an activation, whether it's an invitation to implementation, and I kind of jumpstart that. So I'm going to invite everyone to take a nice deep breath with me, please. Right. So I'm just being present here, taking a few moments to see what is actually queuing up. What is queuing up? All right. So what is coming up is in terms of acclimating to the new embodiment. That makes sense. I just thought about that. Yeah, that makes sense because we have been actually talking about the inner work that you've done and looking at the metamorphosis of your experience. And so being able to be in kind of the new embodiment is it's really embodying that newness, embodying what you actually have become, because there's actually been the integration phases. Most people miss that because we're so like fixated in the what isness, so to speak. But this new embodiment and being able to not just take it on because it is who you are. It is really embracing it. So if I had to reframe kind of what came forth, it would be an embracing the new embodiment and now being able to flow from that place, all right? So embracing the new embodiment and flowing from that place, all right? So give me just a moment in terms of what the mini activation is, kind of what it's feeling like. It's more encouragement and empowerment. All right. So let's just settle into the space for just a moment. Some of you are so ready for this. You just like, yes, this is what I've been waiting on. And you resonate with all that has been said, a great majority of what has been said. And now just feeling like you need that, not kick out of the cocoon, so to speak, but just the invitation to embrace who you are and now start to soar, right? So we take this butterfly from beyond the cocoon, which I actually have works around that too. Yeah, beyond the cocoon. So being in the embodiment of you, right? So I just want to be in the space of that and you embracing this, the embodiment of the new you. And what does that look and feel like? All of who you have become. Not only just who you were destined to be from a general perspective, but it is so much more. The Bible states in Ephesians 3:20 that God can do more than you can ask, imagine, or think, according to the power that be at work within you. What power that is at work within you is now a new embodiment ready to come forth, because that's what we want to ground and we want to activate, right? The new embodiment. Feel into that. It's different for everyone. Everyone has had a unique process, but we're not so much focused on the journey and the process. We are in the present moment. And what is coming forth? What does that feel like? Who are you now? Who are you now? If that's still a little gray, be curious to know. Because that is the umpire, if you will, of your beingness. That is you. The fullness of authenticity in terms of what is true for you now. Now. Not even 5 minutes ago, but now. Let's breathe into that. All right? So I want you to embrace that. Feel that as an embodiment, a full-on integration. Then we'll move into the next now, right? Which is now. And what does that feel like? Who are you now? Not 3 seconds ago, 5 minutes ago, or however, now. And that could be just an extension of what you just felt. But we want to anchor that even more. We want to embody that. We want to embrace that. We want to ground that level and integrate it now. Take a deep breath, please. Right. And let's fill into one more dimension, if you will, one more layer of that, embracing this new embodiment. Now in this moment, what is coming up for you in terms of this new embodiment? Some of you may get it in a word or a phrase or so, a block of thought, right? So what's coming up? And whatever is coming up, I want you to embrace that. Integrate that as more of the new embodiment, all right? Because now we're going to bring this into an activation. Everybody take 3 nice deep belly breaths for me, please. Right. So we're activating and embracing the embodiment of the newest and truest form of who you are. That which is ready to be unleashed in the world. That which knows its primary purpose in the present and knows its emerging mission. That which knows how to accurately dispense the journey's contributions, as well as the now contributions and preparation for that which is emerging. So we activate the embodiment of this new and true self. It is integrated. It is mandated. It is quickened and ready. Activation in full effect for the higher divine purpose and ready to be shared in the world at large. In whatever ways the divine guidance leverages this beautiful work of art and masterpiece that you have become. Take a deep breath. And welcome the new embodiment of who you are. All right. Some of you just be present with that because it may take a minute to settle. And I'm going to leave this segment with that activation. That you go away from here and continue to allow this to anchor and ground into you more embedded, because it really is you. It's just activating what was already there. It's from within. And this will be a continual. This is just a jump off, all right? Just a jump off. Go back and listen to this as many times as you need to. But just know the truth of who you are at this phase is now activated and it's ready. And you will launch successfully from your metamorphosis, from your cocoon, because you have become the evolution, the evolutionary butterfly, if you will. But you'll be soaring like an eagle. You'll be soaring like an eagle. All right? So I hope that this particular impromptu segment was beneficial for you. And be sure to check in the description for relevant trainings and playlist and learning more about me, and also too, if I can support you in any way, there's information to be able to reach out, for that. So I am wishing you the absolute best. Thank you so much for being with me in the power of the present moment. And until the next moment, I'm going to send you away with many, many blessings. And here's to your new embodiment. Take care and stay blessed.